Hello, everyone. Welcome to this broadcast. My name is Gary Gomes. Welcome to this video, rather. My name is Gary Gomes, and I'm a practicing Vedic astrologer of 35 years plus experience. And I will talk to you about Vedic astrology, what it means for you, what it means for the world in general, and how it's reflected in the planetary placements. So, if you would like to contact me for a reading or for a lesson or for lessons, please contact me at 508-525-0001. You can text me at that number, or you can email me at Gary Gomes G. That's my name and letter G, uh, at gmail.com. So that's Gary Gomes G at gmail.com. So, the first thing I want to talk about this week actually was there are a couple of uh, big deals going on, and but the first one I want to talk about, then I'll go to the weekly chart, and then we'll go to your weekly charts, and then we'll go to seeing our locations, what's happening around the world. Oh, by the way, may I remind you to subscribe, like, share, and hit the notification bell if you'd like to keep on receiving these particular sessions. I think this will be shorter than last week's session because I just have some very simple things to say about about the U.S. chart, the Trump chart, and also about there was there have been numerous predictions about uh, Trump's demise. Either being either his death or his removal from office. Um, I think uh, one thing that that happens is it's very tough for people to look astrologically at a chart and not keep their prejudices out of it. And we all have them. I certainly have my own set of prejudices. Oh, by the way, while I'm speaking of prejudices, let me talk about Crystal Expectations, our store in New Bedford, Mass. It's been open for longer than I've been doing astrology, actually. I came there to do astrology readings, and I stayed around. So the store is at 854 Brock Avenue, New Bedford, Massachusetts. You can call me at my home number if you can't reach us at the store, and that's 508-525-0001. Or else you can call me at the store number 508-990-7898. We're at 854 Brock Avenue in New Bedford, Massachusetts, 02744. And you can find us, as you can find me, on Facebook, on Instagram, on a variety of social media sites. Uh, but it's always a little bit easier to text me at my phone number than to uh, try to email me from any of those sites. Okay, so let me just go on to this chart. Let's get back to business, as it were. So the shameless self-promotion period is over. Let me just get back to this. Um, and I think one of the things that is, so I'm going to look at Donald Trump's chart first, current president of the United States. And so this is President Trump's chart. And one of the reasons I'm looking at this is because he had kind of a reversal from the Supreme Court in terms of tariffs. Now, the reversal wasn't um, a complete reversal. Okay, so let's make that clear. He was informed that he didn't have the authority under the particular act he was using to impose emergency tariffs on um, uh, on the countries he's imposed the tariffs on. That doesn't mean he can't continue to apply tariffs, as we've already seen. He's already done that. He's applied a 15% tariff, I believe, for 150 days under under a separate law. If those tariffs were to continue, that would require passage of Congress. And there are also a couple of other tariff bills. I think 338 has never been used, but it's essentially set up to correct trade imbalances. And so I'm no expert on tariff law. I'm just repeating what I've read. And so again, this isn't a negation of that policy. Uh, Essentially, it's really in terms of how that particular law, the limitations that particular law sets up. And although the Supreme Court did say the ability to tax rests with Congress, which is technically true, but they have allocated that responsibility to the president under under special circumstances. So I think this particular fight is, or this particular issue is not yet over. And if we look at President Trump right now, he just emerged from a Rahu subperiod. The tariff finding was made during close to a Saturn subperiod, but it was really, look at the chart date. We're going to go back a little bit. So 2.5, let's increase the levels. All right, so we're going to increase the date. So you see this column that I'm pushing up here. These are what's called Vimshotri Mahadashas, or major planetary periods. And we also have we had a rather pronounced eclipse in Trump's seventh house of allies or partners, and also indirectly affecting his first house. The second part of this particular um, eclipse will happen. Let me just share the screen with you. All right, it's not showing up yet. Sorry, folks. Let me do the share. A little bit exhausted because we had two car accidents this week. Nobody was hurt. They were freak accidents. Um, right after the eclipse, shortly after the eclipse. And they both involve, the eclipse involves my moon. So, and and I'll show you this in terms of the United States chart just briefly. Um, so the tariff, yeah, so it happened roughly just when there was a Jupiter um, Rahu subperiod, excuse me, around February 19th. And I think that that's one of the keys in this particular equation. The eclipse essentially really, no, again, I'm not saying the justices were looking at the eclipse patterns, but they will cause a reversal or they will do something a bit disruptive during an eclipse. And so that will disrupt a policy. I'll give you an idea as to how that affects the U.S.'s chart in a few minutes. But basically, one, two, three, four. Now again, I'm neither opposed nor in favor of tariffs. Um, I was taught for many years they were a bad thing. But I'm also aware that they were used. Um, there were tariffs used in the 90s, in the aughts, and beyond, just in order to address trade imbalances. So it's just not to the significant degree that Trump has used them, but they have been used at various times in American history. Um, and a lot of people have a really negative view of tariffs, mainly because of the Smoot-Hawley tariffs that took place in the 1930s, which worsened the Great Depression. But tariffs can be used as a technique of adjusting or giving competitive advantage to home countries. There are a lot of tariffs placed on U.S. imports, let's say in Japan and China, just for example. So, so essentially, and I believe also on certain, there are tariffs on American cars sold in Japan. I believe on American cars sold in Europe. So these are not new um, phenomena. The reason they're being felt so dramatically is because the United States has outsourced so much of its production that uh, a lot of countries are taking advantage of that. And while they're not lowering their tariffs on U.S. goods, they're benefiting from a U.S. demand for cheaper goods. So this particular short Rahu subperiod, combined with the eclipse in the sign, gave Mr. Trump an unexpected, or maybe, but to be honest with you, when I was looking at the case, I was saying to myself, I'm not sure how the Supreme Court can judge that this particular law it doesn't have negative circumstances, and I was getting a very strong feeling they would reverse the tariff. I think I said earlier on they wouldn't, but I was getting a very strong feeling over the past few weeks they would. And so, so essentially, this particular period is right now he's in a Jupiter subperiod, and this actually gives him the option of turning um, his Jupiter's retrograde, as uh, one very well-known astrologer, James Braham, mentioned. Trump's Jupiter is extremely strong. It's what's called a stationary direct planet. And so it looks like it's it's focused. So he's going to be tough to beat during his Jupiter subperiod, but he is not in a particularly good subperiod or subperiod. Jupiter Venus is not particularly favorable for him because if you look, Venus is in his 12th house of losses. So that'll be problematic for him. Now, as we go on, so he should expect to uh, be involved in several more defeats over the next few months. But I think one of the things about that we know about Donald Trump is he doesn't give up easily. So that's something that we all have to bear in mind. Now the next thing that I want to talk about there was, so I want to go to the eclipse chart. So I'll talk about the next eclipse next week. But when is the next eclipse? The lunar eclipse, which is more so solar eclipses. This really wasn't a very strong eclipse either. To be truthful, this was a partial solar. The next solar eclipse is March 3rd. So I probably better talk about it next weekend. But uh, let me just, I'll look at that a little bit right now. But the solar eclipse chart, somebody had indicated that one of the eclipse lines was going over Washington, D.C., and I want to check that out in my time and space chart. So it's not quite, okay, according to, now again, that they were using a tropical chart. I use a sidereal chart, so you can see over here, this is a Jupiter line. The eclipse lines are really kind of far away from it. So, so again, this is something which is, um, just trying to think of a good way to put it. Different software will tend to give different results. I'm using a star-based or a solar um, or a zodiac that accounts for the precession of the equinoxes. Western astrology would not. And so we do have some problems in York, Georgia, uh, Mexico. This is a Jupiter line going through here, by the way. The eclipse lines show they're affecting more countries like Brazil, Ukraine, Turkey, Egypt, Israel, all the way down to Sudan and close to Somalia, but not quite there. And so we have the eclipse line. We have this eclipse line here, and we have eclipses happening in China and Australia. And if you've been paying attention to those countries, they have had their fair share of problems over the past few months. And an eclipse pattern isn't something which dies as soon as the eclipse is over. It lingers. So I'm going to get out of the screen and I'm going to go to March 2nd. This won't be an exact, um, let me just see now, March 2nd. I should have done this beforehand. Sorry, folks. All right, so this is a blood moon eclipse. The exact eclipse time is second to third. It'll happen around its maximum will be at 11:33 on the second in England. Hold on a second. And this will be a much more obvious eclipse than the one of the past week. So let's, so it's March 2nd, 33. And so it's March 2nd. So this is coming up. But again, they normally occur within 2 weeks of each other. So I'm not sure why some folks were saying they're happening like really, really, really. This is unusual because they're happening back to back and they normally happen back to back. So I'm not sure what the big uh, uproar is about, but 11:33 p.m. And we're going to use Greenwich. And this eclipse will affect roughly the same parts of the world, or in other same parts of the world, roughly the same signs. So we have Aquarius and Leo. So again, we will see some overthrows of leaders or some departures of leaders. Keir Starmer in England is in huge trouble right now. And I'm going to go back to my previous position and say that I think he's going to be out of office within a few months. Uh, I think Macron may hang on a bit longer. I don't have his astrological chart in front of me, um, but uh, I think you'll see a lot of scandal exposed in Europe, in particular, and even in the United States as well, because this eclipse will be more widely spread. So the reason I was talking about the eclipse was because um, the astrologer was making the point that when we have a lunar eclipse line passing over Washington, D.C., that we have that we lose a president. And this one isn't quite matching that criteria. So again, going back to the US's chart, let's go back to the US's chart. So this is hitting the United States moon. Could be a big event around March 2nd or shortly thereafter. A big military event or a big economic event or even a big philosophical event. So I'm thinking you're going to see a huge amount of political scandal erupting all around the world. This is tied largely to Epstein, but also some of you may have seen Prince Andrew got arrested, and it's really more connected with espionage charges. As horrible as what happened with Epstein was, the idea that espionage may be involved, this has like blowbacks to the 1960s, the Perfumo affair in England. A lot of you may not have heard about that, but also we had certain political scandals show up with Chinese agents involved with certain Congress people, and also the Epstein network seems to have infiltrated like in unexpected places, in like really, really bizarre places. Um, so, um, so this may be not only an underage sex scandal, this may be something that's connected with international diplomacy, international intrigue, and to a certain extent, people getting involved in spying operations. Now, if you go to the US's chart, we'll go to the now chart. So we're very short distance away from a Rahu Ketu period. Now, again, like I said, this isn't something I would get particularly crazy worried about. I think you will see some um, leadership, people replaced. I don't think you're going. I'd be astonished if Trump didn't have some physical problems during these next few months. But I'd also be astonished if he died. Between March 27th and April 27th, we're going to have kind of a ruptured country. And I would say a lot of activities like like what happened in the 60s. Now again, that could have good effects, but the 60s events really didn't have, they had some positive effects and they brought a lot of attention to wars, especially the Vietnam War and especially the Civil Rights Movement. They also had deleterious effects in that they paved the way for increased law and order. So it's sort of a gamble of the dice at this particular point. I don't think this administration is going to be really particularly sympathetic to the protesters. So the so this actually is sort of like forcing a more harsh response at this particular point in time. I'm not saying this in a threatening way. I'm just saying it given the fact that we're in a K2 subperiod. And again, there will be some confusion over powers. Maybe we'll see another. Um, I know there are attempts right now to introduce constitutional amendments to limit the president's power to pardon. Um, but I'm not sure how far that's going to go. That's going to go. And there are also certain the SAVE Act, which is essentially an election integrity act, is overwhelmingly popular among the general population, but it's going to be essentially stopped by or attempted to be stopped by the Democrats in Congress. So um, I think that one of the things that's interesting is the so again, this isn't taking sides and just pointing out the problem with the logic is that let's say around roughly 60 to 70% of your party is in favor of your party membership is in favor of a certain piece of legislation, but you don't want it to go through because of a fear that it will compromise voting rights. Yeah, but essentially your constituency is saying to you, no, we want this law. We want voter IDs. So I think so this is one of the dilemmas that um, political parties face, when they're dealing with it. A lot of traditional Republicans are not in favor of tariffs. That's just not part of their so Trump faced that on his side, so the new Republican administration faced that on his side as well. But I think it'll be interesting to see how this plays out with SAVE, um, because I think you'll see a lot of uproar over the next week and a half. And the way both these acts are being interpreted is based upon your political bias. So, but there have been um, discussions with legal experts at universities about tariffs, and they said, no, this isn't the only pathway to tariffs. It's a little bit more, the paths to tariffs, except for the one that Trump instituted to replace um, the emergency tariffs. Um, it is more is lengthier. It requires more verification, um, things like that. The SAVE Act is um, something which is, I mean, I'm not going to pretend that I view the SAVE Act as inherently discriminatory. Okay, I don't. IDs can be had in a variety of ways. Um, the question is whether or not this exceeds governmental authority, but there are standards that the United States has already established for elections. That the states can run their elections, but they have to comply with certain standards. So these are big issues, important issues. Um, Things like Greenland have sort of like gone into the background. And if I'm looking at this map and that eclipse map that I just closed down, we have a cluster of planets right over the United States moon. So that'll cause a lot of conflict, a lot of um, embarrassment. Mars is, however, still exalted in the second house. So we're going to look at that in a second. We're going to look at that right now. Sorry for jumping around so much. So let's go to the now chart. All right, so right now we have Rahu, Mercury, Sun, Venus in um, Aquarius. K2 is in Leo. Like I said, expect a lot of administrations to get shut down, or else a lot of administrations to be rigging elections. That's another signification of K2. And I'm not saying that in a paranoid way. I'm saying that in terms of certain elections can be timed. You can have certain political affiliations formed which benefit the party in power. I spoke about that last week, and somebody accused me of shifting my positions. I'm just really reflecting the reality of the way that um, government seems to work. So there are alliances. So Macron got into power based upon, in France, into power based upon an alliance he formed with another party. It's not, and Stromer got into power based upon a division in the conservative or the reform vote. Now there is um, there's an offshoot of the Reform Party which could screw up Reform's chances of winning the elections, but um, I still think whichever way it goes, Starmer is not. Starmer's a very stubborn person, and he has shown remarkable political survival and remarkable political will. But the thing that's coming up with Andrew and other mistakes he's made in appointments, um, the English have less tolerance for scandal than the United States does. And I'm just thinking this is really So he'll be replaced. It may be replaced by another government. I'm hoping it's a government which is better for England overall, more sympathetic to their people. But we'll have to wait and see what happens. Um, and I think whatever governmental change you see in across the world, you'll see a slow but steady shift to nationalist parties reasserting themselves. Again, it'll slip back and forth for a couple of years, but by the time we get to around 2034, nationalism will be much more the prevalent way of thinking politically across the world than it is right now. So that's something that I'm just given previous trends and given previous Mahadishas as I've seen them. I think we're going to be increasingly nationalistic and increasingly imperialistic, not decreasingly. So let's look at the chart for this week. Um, K2, now again, politics is politics. There could be some kind of massive scandal which throws a lot of the nationalists out of power, but right now it seems to be more the progressives losing power as Saturn approaches Aries. Okay, so this is what happened in the Gore Bush race in the United States. The conservatives were not, I won't say they weren't expected to win, but they were not favored to win. And um, in terms of the elections being manipulated, I think we could look at that as being essentially the first um, election we had questions about whether or not it was manipulated. Okay, certainly not the first one. This occurred in U.S. history. Benjamin Harrison was one, and some people claim Kennedy Nixon was one. But uh, and and both Bush elections were called heavily into question. The Trump election, the first Trump election, was called heavily into question. They are doing research on 2020, and there do seem to be peculiarities in the 2020 election. So I'm thinking it is time for some kind of reform or some kind of revision to the electoral process. Uh, and I'm sort of so we can get a system we're more comfortable with. Now, one thing I will point out in this chart is that we have a few combinations for violence and a few combinations for behind the scenes intrigue. We have Mars aspecting K2, so we may have a lot of money manipulation going on, putting people out of power. We have Sun, Rahu, Mercury, Venus, so communications are essentially being panicked or attempted to be controlled. Saturn is in Pisces. That to me doesn't equate to a new age, to the age of Aquarius starting. Sorry, folks, for those of you who believe in that, but that doesn't equate to that for me. But Saturn is in Pisces, and that does indicate to what I would call a solidifying or a more dogmatic approach to belief systems. Jupiter's in Gemini, and overall for this week anyway, it will increase communications among people. Moon is in Aries. It's overall not a bad time to start things, but that exalted Mars is also aspecting the Moon. It's also aspecting K2, and Mars and K2 are both fiery planets. They're both war or catastrophe-inducing planets. I'll just give you a brief um, update on what lunar eclipses can do if they're placed in the wrong place. Uh, we had uh, yeah, really quickly. We had one car smashed into by a car heading the other way. The car was parked. Nobody was hurt, thank God. But we have to have the entire front end of the car fixed. And the other day, my front bumper fell off the car, so we have to have that bumper. So it just seems to be things connected with front bumpers that they got affected by this particular eclipse, at least in my life. The plus side, though, is so this is essentially a K2 phenomenon. Accidents are essentially a K2 phenomenon. The Mars K2 is really what caused it more so than the eclipse. But K2 is always involved in eclipses, right? So you can say the K2 caused the accident. And but one thing I've always noticed about K2 is that K2 doesn't take away something without something worthwhile being given in its place. So there's a certain um, freedom or a certain liberation from some concerns um, and even some benefits. So I can tell you personally, my own K2 Mahadasha was a lot of surprises in terms of personal advancement and promotional advancement and even opportunities. But also, I had never been, I had never had an operation in my entire life before my K2 Mahadasha started. I had three or four operations in my K2 Mahadasha. So I think that these are the kinds of things. So K2 opens up doors. It makes seemingly impossible things possible, but it also causes some personal injury. So I'm not laughing at those. Somebody wrote me that they got injured at work, and I really feel it badly for them, and I hope you get better soon. Um, but 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 basically, this combination uh, presents a lot of emotional turmoil for people, especially over the past week. And that's mainly because we had the moon going over Mars, first of all, then the eclipse in the middle of the week, and then the moon going over Saturn, which essentially makes people nervous, and then the moon over Aries, which makes people fight, etc., etc. So, and Mars is aspecting the moon as well, so it's going to make people a little bit at each other's throats over the next week. So let's look at a little bit at Iran, because I'm still interested in Iran. It's a fascinating country, long history, like incredibly long history. So we have Jupiter, Venus, Saturn. So between now and July 7th, we'd be astonished if there wasn't a change in leadership. Um, this is a special kind of a yoga of, no, it's not. I'm sorry, it's not a special kind of yoga. Is Mars involved? One, two, three, four, five, six. No, it isn't. So I take that back. But the Saturn Rahu combination is really kind of nasty. And I'd be March 19th to March 28th are critical dates for Iran. And May 23rd to June 16th look like critical dates for Iran in terms of rulership. So this entire Saturn subperiod right here, um, will they be attacked by the United States or other countries? Difficult to tell from this map, but let me just look. One, two, three, four, five, six. Uh, the it's possible. Um, and I know I was saying last week I didn't think that was going to happen, or a couple of weeks ago I didn't think that was going to happen. but it becomes more possible the more deeply Iran goes into the Saturn subperiod. But there may be an internal revolution between March 19th and March 28th, March 28th, and also again possibly between May 23rd and June 16th. So it does look like some changes are coming in Iran fairly soon. Let's look at um, India. We've looked at India a lot over the past few weeks. India has India is in Mars Rahu subparade, excuse me, and this can indicate some internal disruption in the country, especially peaking around May 24th, yeah, at least from the chart. So, so India looks like it's going to be going through some changes or some reformations over the next few weeks, actually between now and April 2nd. And it'll continue. It won't be as intense, but it'll continue really until, let me see now. Oh, sorry, folks. This has been a long week for me. Hold on a second. It isn't you, it's me. So you're not boring me. All right. Yeah, until February of 2027 when things should be more or less back to normal. So the entire year for India looks kind of disruptive, kind of unsettled. Financially, it looks okay. Let's look at, I wonder if I have Canada's map in here. Yes, I do. Now, the Canada birth map is less precise than the United States or India or even Iran. Um, but Canada is in a Venus subperiod. There's more focus on expenses, more focus on prohibition of finances. Uh, Let me just, it's on a Venus subperiod. It was born during a Venus subperiod, which explains why it's such a polite country. Um, but it's in a Saturn major planetary period. And one, two, three, four, five, six, seven. Saturn's exalted in the eighth house. Towards the end of 2026 through February of 2028, I think you'll see some significant geographical changes in Canada. Let's see now. Let's just go on. And we'll look at another couple of things. I haven't looked at the UK chart. Kingdom, kingdom. Oh, it helps if you put the right spelling in, doesn't it, Gary? All right, so it's not showing up under that. Maybe I put it under Great Britain. Maybe I didn't put it in at all. I'll try UK and after that I'll just stop. Trying UK. See now. Okay, so apparently I don't have the UK Active Union Act. All right, all right. So England will see some changes after March 5th, definitely. Um, K2's passing over Saturn. That can mean a switch in government. And it looks more likely than not the UK will have a switch of government. And let me just, I'm going to stop it there. Um, and mainly because I don't want to lose your focus, and I don't want to, I want to go on to your individual astrology maps. Okay, my friends. Let's see. No, no, sure. All right. So for Aries, Aries is in Vedic astrology, Aries. Sun lasts between April 15th and May 15th. Some attention paid to home life, some changes at home. The Lord of the Second is in the 11th house, so good for financial gains for the sign, especially with help from the government and especially with help um, from family. So that actually looks fairly good for this particular sign. Jupiter's retrograde in the third house. That's a good placement. Makes the country rather diplomatic, easy to get along with. K2 is in the fifth house. I'm sorry. It makes this sign rather easy to get along with. My apologies. I was flipping back to England. K2 is in the fifth house. Um, it's going to be difficult to manage children this week. Again, although they may calm down their behavior just a little bit to eccentric to make you um, have some difficulty with children. Okay. Seventh house is ruled by Venus, is in the 11th house. So that gives dissatisfaction with material possessions. Mars is in the 10th. That's a very good placement. Mars is exalted. The sign's confidence will be very high this week. Saturn's in the 12th house. Saturn's fairly well placed in the 12th house, but it does give a lot of expenses. For Taurus, Taurus has no planets in the first house. These are not planets, these are special rising signs. Jupiter's in the second house, and it does indicate an influx of money into the sign, maybe from past efforts. K2 is in the fourth house, so some disruption around home life. Maybe some repairs needed. Mars is in the ninth house of luck, so again, if you apply yourself, there's nothing you can't do in this lifetime. Um, Maybe some unrealistic expectations at work that you'll be succeeding much more quickly than you will, but this is still a good combination. Saturn's in the 11th house. It does give some financial um, drag and some obligations to friends that have to be fulfilled. But overall, it's good for a slow but steady accumulation of wealth. For So that's between May 15th and June 15th. For the period between June 15th and July 15th, that's Gemini in Vedic astrology. Jupiter's in the first house. A lot of focus on relationship life, a lot of focus on career life, but don't get involved in a relationship just yet. Wait at least for another uh, week or so, because Mars is about to change signs, is about to come out of that eighth house where it does the most damage. And also, in terms of siblings, you may see siblings with certain health problems or even up against it financially. For your chart, uh, Mercury's Lord of the fourth house, good for financial gain, financial improvement. And we have no plans in the fifth except for Venus. So Venus will just ride along the coattails of this particular planet. Um, so if there's love indicated in the chart, the chart will manufacture more love. Um, Let me just see now. Gemini has Mars in the eighth house, which is why I said it's not a good idea to get involved in new relationships just now. In a before the end of the week, fine, but not right now. Sun, Venus, and Mercury, along with Rahu in the ninth house, that creates a kind of a Raj Yoga in the chart, and it will increase the person's luck or financial um, problems. Let's see now. For Cancer, Cancer lasts from July 17th to roughly August 15th. I'm sorry, July 15th to roughly August 15th. Um, for those of you born during that time. And Ketu's in the second house, so there'll be problems with communication. And Rahu's in the eighth, so there'll be problems or from unidentified sources, maybe even some um, nefarious undertakings or gossip behind your back, or even some potential for black magic with that combination. Um, Cancer has Mars exalted in the seventh house. This isn't necessarily a bad combination. Spouse will be hardworking and a bit aggressive, but again, not a good time for a new relationship. That's really not about for about 3 months onward. Um, my um, and let's see now. We have all these planets clustered in the eighth house. Some hidden problems may come out this week, or some death. Saturn's in the ninth house. This isn't a bad placement inherently, but it does give slow moving progress. So best not to uh, get too wild about it. Um, Moon is in Saturn's in the eighth house. So Saturn in the eighth house, the person feels packed away, that they a little bit lonely during this period. And Saturn goes, Saturn as Lord of the chart goes to um let me see now. And I think sorry for the hesitation there. I was trying to gather my thoughts. And I think for this sign overall, there'll be a lot of progress at work, but not so much in relationship life and new friends or new proteges coming into your life during this month. For Leo, that's roughly August 15th to September 15th. K2 is in the first house, so this planet will have, or this sign will have some difficulty communicating. There are no planets in the second house. Second house Lord is Jupiter is placed in the 11th house, so pretty much whatever the sign wants, it will achieve, at least materially. And third house is Libra. The Lord of Libra is in the seventh house, so that can give gains or new interests on relationship partners' part. Um, out at so I'm not going to talk about Aradas. One, two, three, four. Lord of fourth eyes. So let's, yeah, again, I noted out there for a second. So let's say Leo is going to have kind of an interesting month, a lot of adversaries, uh, a lot of hidden enemies, but the luck is changing as of today, and again, the sign will accomplish whatever it desires. For Virgo, Virgo goes between September 15th and October 15th, and the most important thing about this particular chart, I think, is the fact that the Lord is in the sixth house, so the sign will be facing a lot of enemies, a lot of difficulty, and having some frustration and breaking off from those individuals. Now, that won't last um, much longer, maybe around 3 days into the week, and you'll feel like basically a little bit freer, but also a little bit less focused because Mercury is going into Pisces, which isn't a good placement either. Venus will follow about 8 days, about 7 or 8 days later. And when Venus goes into Pisces, the entire chart will light up. So essentially, you'll see, at least temporarily, some miscommunication, some bad, harsh words. But this combination does indicate fighting with friends or fighting with people you care about. Let's see now. The um, other thing about this chart is, um, no, I think I've covered it all. Mars is in the fifth house, so if this sign wants something, it should definitely fight for it. Okay, so that's really not a lot of thinking to do. Um, for Virgo, Virgo has no planets in the first house. That's between September 15th and October 15th. And Jupiter's placed in the 10th house, good for career, good for finances, good for expensive cars. And I think one of the things about this particular sign is it does show overcoming some adversity, overcoming some enemies or hidden opponents, overcoming people who are actively opposing what you want to do, either for financial or for emotional reasons. But Jupiter is in the 10th house. It does show some potential for financial gain. And Ketu's in the 12th house, so good for spiritual activity as well. So this chart is actually a fairly decent chart. It's not really all that horrible. Um, Probably a good time for this chart to shop around for cars if it's doing that, because the Lord of the fourth house is exalted. Um, but I have to warn you, around February 26th, we're going to start a Mercury retrograde as well. So that's going to be kind of an intense experience. Okay, so let's move on to Libra. Libra has no planets in the first house. It has K2 in the 11th house, which will give unusual or spiritual friends. Jupiter's in the ninth house. This gives opportunities for learning. Moon is in the seventh house. Some potential for new relationship partner, but not really very strong. And if I didn't want to be taken, um, I thought that pendant was satisfying. Um, For other signs in the Libra, from the Libra perspective, Jupiter's in the ninth house, aspecting the first house. How can that be bad? Jupiter is aspecting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Jupiter's not aspecting Mars, but it is aspecting this cluster of planets in the fifth house. So if a person has interest in politics or interest in arts or interest in furthering their learning, now is a great time to do it. Let me just see now. Mars is exalted, gives this planet the power to fight back, at least for a few short weeks. And then you have Moon in the ninth house, which will give financial gains through religious activities. So that seems true in your case. For So that's Libra, that's October 15th to November 15th. For Scorpio, Scorpio has no planets placed in the first house. It has an exalted Mars placed in the third house. So this is going to make this planet very aggressive, very difficult to deal with. Um, and it will have a strong desire nature. It will essentially um, push out of the way anybody who's getting in its way. That's not necessarily bad because Scorpio tends to be rather a reticent sign. It doesn't like the spotlight. But with this cluster of planets hitting the third house and the fourth house, um, I think for Scorpio, let's get back to Scorpio again for a second. Good, strong desire, some disruption of home life, some problems with getting recognized for work you've done in the past. Moon is in the sixth house, some enemies, especially among uh, the warriors or the people who are more militaristic around Taiwan. And okay, Saturn is in the fifth house in the sign. So again, old dogmas will not change rapidly for this particular sign. Old beliefs will not fade away. Moon is in the sixth house, good for financial gains somewhat, and also good for working at problems. Jupiter's in the eighth house, so this could mean unexpected windfalls for this rising sign. And K2 is in the 11th, is in the 10th house. So this can give good recommendations for teaching, but also some difficulty in adjusting to a classroom or to a different work environment, even after the recommendation. So that's from um, November 15th to December 15th. From December 15th to January 15th, Sagittarius will be the rising sign that goes up in the morning as sunrise. And Mars is in the second house, so this particular sign is ready to fight. Um, and it has partners. So you have Jupiter over here, aspecting back, looking back on it. Have an exalted Mars in the second house. Mercury, Venus, Sun, Rahu is probably being hit with so many different opinions of things that it doesn't know when to back off. So um, for this particular sign, Moon is in the fifth house. That's very good for gain of inheritance or gift. gain of knowledge from previous efforts. And let's see now, we have really speaking, um, only Mars with a crossbow in the sign behind or in house matters behind it. So it doesn't look like there will be a reconciliation this year, but maybe in 2026. And especially this sign has been having some problems with its moon, with its mother lately, or else with female partners lately. So that combination of the Mars aspect and the moon won't last much longer, won't last past a few days into next week. And so this is overall optimistic for this particular sign. K2 is in the ninth house, excellent for communication skills and really good for understanding what a person wants to know before they say it. Um, the Rahu Mercury cluster, Rahu Mercury Sun Venus cluster in Aquarius. Again, strong desire nature for these individuals. This is the U.S. chart, basically. And Saturn's in the fourth house, so there can be some deep stabilization of structure in this person's life. So let's move on to Capricorn, only three to go. I bet you're happy to hear that. Um, Mars sits in its exaltation sign, so this is roughly January 15th to February 15th. And Mars sits in its exalted sign, very proud of itself. It won't be quite as proud within a couple of days, but right now it's very proud of itself. And Sun, Venus, Mercury, and Rahu form several Dana yogas, wealth producing combinations in this chart. So this should be good for financial growth for this particular sign. Saturn is in the third house, makes it a little bit difficult to discipline oneself, and people will feel like they're not getting their desires answered. So that's one downside to this Saturn placement. Let's see now. Jupiter's in, Moon is in the fourth house, so it could indicate a change of residence. Jupiter in the seventh house is basically a decent teacher. And essentially, with Jupiter in that particular sign, in the sixth house, it does indicate maybe not so difficult enemies, but some people opposing what you want. And K2 sits in your ninth house, I'm sorry, in your eighth house. So that will make you interested in it, obscure or underexplored um, um, forms of entertainment. For Aquarius, this is we're getting down to the finish line. For Aquarius, you have Sun, Mercury, Venus, all placed in the first house. So there's a lot of relationship focus in this chart. There's a lot of basically good luck in the chart because of the Venus Mercury conjunction. And the only one that's a little bit of a spoiler, but again, it creates when it's in certain combinations in the chart, and this is one of those, is in the same sign with the Lord of the uh, fifth house and the Lord of the seventh house. And also, let me just see now. Yeah, so it's essentially, it seems a little bit. And let's go on to Pisces. Pisces is the last sign of the zodiac. Pisces has Saturn in the first house. So Pisces is normally not very a very mature. materialistic sign. It's more interested in ideas than in or mystical estates or escapes from reality than it is in owning concrete possessions. But over the next couple of years, you'll see Pisces do exactly that. And this sign lasts from March 15th to April 15th. Uh, Aquarius lasted between February 15th and March 15th, just to remind myself of that. So this will give some ossification or some stiffness to the sign. Moon is in the second house. This is very good, very well placed. And so essentially, the 12 signs are almost all in a state of disruption. I think the most favorable sign this month is probably trying to see maybe Cancer, but it has a lot of obstacles to overcome too. So there's no sign that I can see that will not have some major obstacles thrown at it this week. Now that differs from chart to chart. It differs depending on the subperiod that you're experiencing and other factors in your life. But Pisces, I don't think I finished Pisces. Pisces has Saturn in the first house and Moon in the fourth house. So a lot of focus on conventional home life. Moon is in the second house, a lot of focus on parents and mothering. And K2 is in the sixth house. So again, this gives ultimate protection to the sign because it makes it lash out at antagonists without a second thought. Mars is in the 11th house, good for financial gain. And Mercury, Venus, Sun, and Rahu are in the 12th house, so you have to be careful about too much expenditure. So let's go to the astro mapping chart. Sorry if I faded off away a bit there. It's just um, it's just been a rough week on me physically because I really haven't been able to recover from snowing and all this other stuff for any prolonged period of time. So been it's been kind of interesting because when I was younger, it bothered me, but not as much as it does now. So that's just my story. Um, Mars is passing over close to the Hawaiian Islands. Hopefully, there will not be some scandals connected with real estate there like there have been over before. But I think really this does indicate some potential for volcanic activity or earthquake activity. The same is true in the Aleutian Islands and in far western Canada. There's a Sun Rahu Venus line hitting um, the upper north of the Aleutians and also uh, squarely in the western part, the eastern part of Alaska, and that's crossing over into the Yukon and um, even affecting places like. So that should give some communication. There'll be more communications in this part of the world. Saturn is passing through British Columbia over Vancouver. No, that's not a particularly good placement. So this may give some problems to the economy, may affect uh, Washington State and Oregon and even Northern California. So this is It's just outside of touching the states, but I think if it's that close, it's really going to have an impact. There's a Jupiter line running down here, so that may actually stop these states from hitting really financially hard times. But it's a little bit of a hope. I think financially those states are in kind of miserable shape, if I'm being quite honest. Um, the moon is passing through over the Great Lakes and over central east central Canada, hitting again, not Minnesota so much this time, but Wisconsin and Michigan and um Indiana, Illinois, Kentucky, Tennessee, and down into um, I believe that's Alabama, um, and down into um, Mexico and Guatemala. So the moon line indicates changes in governments or maybe changes in political perspective or public persona for those states. And when I say public persona, that can indicate scandals. There is a Mars line. There's a potential for conflict or some kind of um, accident event in the Great Lakes, especially especially not in Wisconsin and in Michigan, and also yeah. So it's mainly focused on Michigan. It looks like from this chart, Michigan and Wisconsin. From this chart, the Mars line goes all the way through Ohio, down into West Virginia, North Carolina, and South Carolina, and touches Cuba. So we know that Cuba's in rough shape. I should look up Cuba's chart. We know that Cuba's in rough shape financially right now because they can't. They're having trouble getting oil into the country. Um, and that Mars line is also passing into Venezuela, and Colombia. So those two areas will be in conflict. Western, far western Brazil, Bolivia, Argentina, and even touching into Uruguay may have um, some fighting. There were some rumors that there were fires started in um, Chile, um, by people associated with Israeli intelligence. I don't know how true those rumors are. But I just figured I'd just throw that out for you to consider. Um, I'm starting to feel like every problem in the world is being blamed on Israel, which seems unlikely to me, at least from some sources. Seems unlikely to me. Um, so right here we have a sun line going through New Hampshire, Massachusetts. So there could be some conflicts in state governments in those regions. Puerto Rico is also being affected by that. Um, the let's the Guyana regions of South America are being affected by that sun line, so there could be some shifts in government there. Um, and it does look like there's political scandal or political disruption in Brazil. Brazil looks very active this month or this week, and I think you will see some upsets in the Brazilian government over the next month or so, based upon the eclipses. The Greenland is actually showing up in the map for the first time. We have a Mercury and a Saturn line, and that Saturn line is also abutting Brazil, so some economic problems in Brazil, but also in Greenland, and also a lot more communication about Greenland. I know the president has sent some aid to Greenland. I can't remember what kind of aid it was. And Jupiter is passing through Iceland. Now, Jupiter in Gemini is normally considered to be a good placement. Jupiter is not really friendly with Mercury, but it does okay in that sign because it's heading towards its exaltation. So Iceland and Greenland may be getting some good news over here. There are no planets affecting England right now. Um, we do have a moon line which can indicate broad changes between a moon and a Jupiter line. Yeah, so that may indicate legal problems for Portugal, Spain, France, Germany, but it's very broad. It's not really right on the money. The lines aren't touching those countries. Um, and to be honest with you, I don't think, you this, the current news events I've seen coming out of England are very um, worrying to the people in power. So it looks kind of interesting. We'll see what happens there over the next few months, but like I said, it doesn't look good for the current government. There's a moon line. I'm sorry, not a moon line. There's a Mars line going through Sweden, um, Poland, Eastern Europe, Greece, and down into uh, Algeria and also affecting Libya somewhat, and all the way down to South Africa. So this entire region looks like there's going to be a lot of conflict there. Change in governments is anticipated in um, places like areas next to Greece. I'm not necessarily saying Greece itself will have a change in, in government, and also in certain Eastern European countries. So this will be interesting to watch. Um, there are a lot of planetary lines over Saudi Arabia, Israel, Turkey, um, Ukraine, Russia, and especially over here, these two lines do indicate changes or disruptions in the government. In Finland, all the way down to South Africa, and we have this Venus line running through Ukraine. Could that mean peace at last? I mean, I wouldn't be quite so optimistic, but maybe, just possibly. And let's see now. Saudi Arabia is also in the news lately. Some of the people connected with the Epstein papers come from this part of the world, or the Epstein emails come from this part of the world. And there's been a lot of international scandal. Somalia, there's be a lot of news about Somalia down here as well. And I need to get that back into frame. Sorry, folks. And we have this is Oman. This is Saturn line through Oman and through Iran. So that doesn't bode well for Iran, at least not in terms of its current government. Obviously, the people have had a really tough time in Iran. And so I'm thinking that Iran's days are numbered. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And earliest I'm seeing is late March, latest I'm seeing is late May, for a change. Let's see now. It's a Saturn line. This is Kyrgyzstan, I believe. That's Kyrgyzstan or Uzbekistan. I can't remember which of the two countries that is. That's there's not much happening right now in Afghanistan and Pakistan. And I think with India, we're seeing a Jupiter line running through India. So essentially, this is more of when Jupiter tracks across the country, it can mean great benefit, financial growth, but it can also mean legal proceedings. So that's one of the things you have to be careful about. Um, there's a moon line running through um, Mongolia, China, and looks like Myanmar and Laos. So these countries will have some fame or some recognition over the next few weeks. And we have a Mars line running right next to Taiwan in China and China. So that doesn't bode well. And there is also a sun line. So this could indicate potential conflict involving Borneo, Philippines, and even Korea. Hopefully that won't happen. Hopefully I'm wrong about that. There's a moon, um, Mercury, a Sun Mercury line passing over Japan, and Japan just had elections, as I think you know, in which they won an overwhelming majority of seats. The sitting party won an overwhelming majority of seats. Um, and over here in Guyana, we have a Venus line, so that indicates new exports or new financial growth. There's a Rahu line, some governmental scandal in Western Australia. And finally, we have a Saturn line running through um, Indonesia and down into um, far eastern Australia. So we can expect to see some kind of governmental uh, or economic problems coming from that part of the world. Jupiter is passing over some small island chains and is hitting and is giving some legal implications to New Zealand. So that's about it for this week. I hope I have not overstayed my welcome, and I hope this information is useful for you. Uh, I apologize if I was a little tired earlier on when I was doing the part of the broadcast. These things happen to me, and I'm trying to arrange to do them at a time in which I'm not quite so tired. But like I said, it's been more the weather than anything else. So that's it for me for this week. I think I promised you I was going to cover something this week that I know I didn't cover. I'll make up for it next week. In the meantime, I love you all. Take care of yourselves. For those of you who are in the path of the storm, heading up the 95 corridor um, in the United States, be safe, be secure, stay at home, and just be careful. Okay? We don't want to see anybody hurt themselves or get into bad shape as a result of the storm. Okay? Or as a result of anything, to be honest with you. So just be careful, be prudent, don't do anything I would say, optimally, don't do anything to provoke someone who may have um, issues with the current government or with the opposition. it's just not worth it. Just um, because I think one of the things that I found is you're not going to change their opinion. You're just going to make them angry and upset yourself. If you like to fight, that's one thing. If you don't like to fight, it's just a bloody waste of time, and it'll actually stir things up and make things a little bit worse. I'm hoping people come to their senses just a little bit and try to cooperate more. Um, the astrology tells me that's not likely to happen, but I can always carry hope, and I can always think positive thoughts and hope that we resolve our differences. But this has been an interesting period in history. Um, if you go back to it, if you go back, if you're careful enough to look for like the seeds of this, you can see them in the early 70s. This is not, this is just a manifestation of cultural issues that were starting back in those times. And it's really not, so this is where I'm going to go full blown um, conspiracy theory on you. It's really not, people are being turned against each other, really not because of these issues, but because certain other parties want to keep individuals confused and at each other's throats because then they can't change anything. They can't um, do anything which will make life better for other people. So just bear that in mind. Essentially, you're playing a game, and the game is a bit rigged. So just make sure when you're looking at the news that you keep a critical and open mind about it. Okay? So you're smart people. I don't have to tell you this, uh, but that's really the main thing. And like I said, if something sounds ridiculous to you on the surface, it probably is ridiculous. Okay, I love you all. Thank you so much for watching. I have faith in your intelligence. I have faith in your discretion. And if I make mistakes, please let me know because you're my checks and balances. Okay? Thanks a lot, folks. Love you all. Thank you so much for watching. And peace. Namaste.